TheCraftyGemini, and I'm back with another video in my Samosa Quilt Along video series. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to cut down yardage into your own 10" by 10" pre-cut squares, and also things that you want to keep in mind if you're going to be using directional fabric. Now, for those of you that want to make this quilt and use the 10" slicer with 10" squares, but maybe you're not buying the pre-cut squares, you can also cut up your own 10" squares from yardage. So here I have some yardage of fabric, and this is folded so that the selvages are away from me. So this is the same way the fabric would be folded when you purchase it at your fabric store off the bolt. Okay, so we're just going to put it like this. I will cut off this edge first to make sure that I have a nice clean cut edge. So here the fabric is on grain, but you can see that it wasn't cut straight. So the bottom flap here, the bottom edge, is shorter than the top, and you want to make sure to clean off this edge first. So my favorite rulers to use for something like this are going to be a long strip ruler. This one measures 6 inches by 24, so it spans the whole width of the fabric when it's folded up twice, so easy to cut in one swoop. Then the other one is going to be a square ruler that's larger than whatever the size I'm cutting, in this case 10" squares, so this one is 12.5" square ruler. So first I'm going to line up any straight line on my ruler with this fold on the bottom of my fabric here. So I have it lined up on the fold, and that tells me that then this edge is going to be straight, and I'm going to scoot it over as far as I can, so I'm only cutting away the most minimal amount of fabric that I need to, but that I'm still able to clean off this edge so everything is straight. All right, so now both bottom and top layer are nice and straight, and I can cut them doubled up. I'm going to take my 12.5" square ruler. I line it up with my 0 point where you see the 1 and the 1 on the corner. There should only be a 1 and a 1 on one of the 4 corners on your square rulers. So I line up the 1 here so that it's on my left side because I'm cutting right-handed. And then this clean cut edge, I will line it up with the 10" mark right here on my ruler so that that is going straight right there. So I know what is underneath the ruler at this time is what I want to keep. From this edge to this line that I lined it up against is 10 inches, and that's the strip I want, so I can then subcut it into my 10" squares. So on this edge, which is where I need to cut, first, my ruler is not long enough to reach the whole thing, and I'm right-handed, so I'm not really going to be able to put my hand here, cross my arms, and try and make that cut. So instead, what I call my 2 ruler trick, I use 2 rulers. So the long one that spans the whole width of the fabric, I line it up and bump it up to this guy. And again, still make sure that it's lined up so that it's straight. And I like to slide my rulers up so that I make sure that that 10" chunk that I want is going all the way up to the whole way of the fabric. And it is. So at this time, I can get rid of this one. And I know that this ruler is now positioned correctly. With my right-handed cut, when I cut here, from here to here is going to be the exact 10 inches that I want to keep. So you would cut your yardage into these 10" strips. Then go back and subcut them into 10" squares. So now we'll turn them. This is where my selvage is, so I want to get rid of that. So again, just any ruler that can cover the whole length that you need to cut. I'm lining up a straight line on my ruler, whichever one I want, with that cut edge at the bottom so I know it's nice and straight. And then I'm just going to cut the selvages off. Done. Now again, I'm going to turn my ruler so that that 1 corner, my 0 point, is on my left side. I line up the cut edge here at the 10". And what I want to keep is the 10" square that's underneath the ruler. So I know that when I make this cut here, that's exactly the correct cut I need to make. I'll hold this one, place my second ruler so it's nice and straight, remove this one, and now I'm in the perfect spot to make the right-handed cut. And now, because it was doubled up, we have 2 10" squares at once. We'll repeat that same step again here. And from every 10" strip, if you're using, decent quality quilting cotton, that's usually tends to be between 40 to 45 inches in width. Because these are 10" squares, you'll be able to get 4 10" squares from each 10" strip, and you'll have this little bit of waste. So you can save that for other scrappy quilts, but I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you would just repeat that across all your yardage, and to all the different fabrics that you want to work with. Then you'll be ready to start with us to cut with the 10-inch slicer to make your Samosa quilt blocks. And here's a quick tip for those of you that may be working with directional prints and you're a little bit hesitant because you're not sure how the directional design is going to appear in the finished quilt block. Because the block is not turned when we cut it, so we cut here and then we cut here, the two background pieces, if you're using a directional print, will still be facing up. The few things to keep in mind are, if once you have all your blocks completed, you decide that you want to start playing with the orientation of the blocks, and say you want some this way and some upside down like this, then you want to know what fabric you're using here, because if it's a directional print like this, it's going to be upside down if I decide to flip the block all the way around. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. But if you know you're going to be making a quilt with a bunch of blocks that look just like this side by side, then it's not really going to matter whether or not you're using a directional print, because they will all be in the correct orientation across your rows and columns. Okay, the second thing is that if you have a directional print that you're thinking is going to look seamless in the background, that may not be the case. Because we cut here, this gets sewn. So you have to account for a little bit of that fabric getting eaten up in that seam allowance. So you can tell that I sliced the turtle right there, and I still see a little bit of the back part of it when it got sewn back together, and the same thing goes for the fox. So if you have a really large design and it just gets sewn back, it might not look as seamless as you'd like. This has quite a bit of background space, so I think because the deer are kind of lined up, and so are the fox and bears here, it all looks pretty symmetrical, and you can't really notice too much about this seam that's running through the background. So those are the things that I would suggest you keep in mind before you choose your directional fabrics to use it for this Samosa quilt. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my tips and tricks for cutting down yardage into 10-inch squares, and also remember to keep those tips in mind if you're going to be using a directional print for this quilt along. Now, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your quilty friends, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.